Do you remember gathering around the television and waiting for the Partridge Family to bring music, laughter, and a little warmth into your home? To millions of viewers, its cast felt less like distant stars and more like familiar faces welcomed into the living room each week. More than 5 decades later, time has carried them down very different roads. Some found even greater fame, some quietly left the screen, and some are sadly gone. Now we'll discover where they ended up, how time changed them, and which stories may forever reshape the way you remember the show. Shirley Jones played Shirley Partridge, the widowed mother who guided her 5 children from an ordinary household into a touring family band. Her calm authority and clear singing voice kept the comedy grounded when the children's schemes threatened to outrun common sense. Born March 31st, 1934, in Charleroi, Pennsylvania, she was discovered by Richard Rodgers before making her screen debut in Oklahoma. Jones was 36 when The Partridge Family premiered in 1970, already an Academy Award winner and one of Hollywood's best-known musical stars. Moving into a weekly sitcom gave the series immediate credibility, but it also changed how the industry saw her. Jones later acknowledged that becoming so closely identified with television's cheerful mother weakened her film career, though she said she had no regrets. Rather than retreat, she continued through television movies, stage appearances, guest roles, and occasional returns to musical performance, carrying an older Hollywood tradition into changing decades. The public image of effortless warmth concealed a performer with far greater range, from the darkness of Elmer Gantry to the domestic optimism of the Partridge home. In 2024, her family gathered to celebrate her 90th birthday after a lifetime lived before audiences. Shirley Jones is 92 in 2026 and has greatly reduced her public work, yet she remains the living center of the series, the presence that made its improbable family feel safe. Dave Madden played Reuben Kincaid, the Partridge Family's manager, reluctant chaperone, and most frequent target of Danny's schemes. His dry irritation and defeated pauses turned every argument with the red-haired boy into a contest Reuben seemed destined to lose. Born December 17, 1931, in Sarnia, Ontario, Canada, Madden developed his timing as a stand-up comic before becoming a familiar face on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. He was 39 when The Partridge Family began in 1970, an experienced comedian entering the role that would define his screen career. Reuben gave Madden his widest recognition and made him essential to the show's comic rhythm. The identification endured so strongly that he later returned to the character in a sketch on The Ben Stiller Show. After the bus stopped rolling, Madden remained a dependable television presence, most notably as diner regular Earl Hicks on Alice, while guest work allowed his understated humor to age naturally. Away from acting, photography became a lasting pursuit, and in retirement, he looked back on his life in the memoir, Reuben on Rye. The title reflected his bond with a man who was perpetually exasperated, yet never truly abandoned the family he managed. Dave Madden died in Jacksonville, Florida, on January 16, 2014, at age 82, from complications of myelodysplastic syndrome. Reuben Kincaid remains the weary outsider who complained about the chaos, then climbed aboard again. Brian Forster played Christopher "Chris" Partridge from the 2nd season onward, taking over as the family's young drummer. His quieter manner balanced Danny's mischief and helped the recast settle naturally into the ensemble. Born April 14, 1960, in Los Angeles, California, into an acting family, Forster began appearing in commercials and television as a child. He was 11 when he joined the Partridge Family in 1971, stepping into a familiar role on a highly visible family comedy. The series made Chris the part by which audiences knew him, but it did not lead Forster toward a long pursuit of child star fame. After voicing the character in animated Partridge projects, he left professional acting and built a life far from studio schedules. That second chapter proved more varied than his brief Hollywood resume. He taught science, worked as a winemaker, performed in community theater, and pursued motor racing seriously enough to become an instructor and race winner. Decades after playing drums on a painted bus, competition offered him a different stage, measured in corners and lap times rather than applause. As recently as 2025, he was still competing in historic Formula Ford cars. Brian Forster is 66 in 2026 and remains largely outside mainstream acting, with occasional nostalgia appearances connecting him to the show. His story gives Chris Partridge a hopeful afterlife, a child performer who carried the memory forward without letting it define his adulthood. Gordon Jump played Albertson, and several other brief characters across the Partridge family, usually working men or authority figures caught inside the family's latest complication. His open face and gently bewildered delivery could establish a personality in moments. Born April 1st, 1932, in Dayton, Ohio, Jump studied broadcasting at Kansas State University and worked in radio and television before turning fully toward acting. He was 38 when he first appeared on the series in 1970, still building recognition through small roles rather than carrying a permanent television identity. Because the show used him as different men, it displayed the adaptable work that kept him employed through the decade. Those appearances formed part of a long apprenticeship before audiences attached a name to his face. At 46, Jump found his breakthrough as Arthur "Big Guy" Carlson, the well-meaning station manager on WKRP in Cincinnati, and later became the lonely Maytag repairman in commercials that ran for years. He could play foolishness without cruelty, yet also showed unsettling dramatic range as a predatory bicycle shop owner in a serious two-part episode of Different Strokes. Gordon Jump died near Los Angeles on September 22, 2003, at age 71, after suffering from pulmonary fibrosis. For Partridge Family viewers, his appearances remain early glimpses of a character actor whose greatest recognition arrived after years of making small parts feel complete. David Cassidy played Keith Partridge, the eldest son, lead singer, and heartthrob at the center of the family band. His relaxed charm drew viewers in, while his genuine singing voice made the fictional group believable beyond television. Born April 12, 1950, in New York City to actors Jack Cassidy and Evelyn Ward, he began professionally on Broadway before moving into television. Cassidy was 20 when The Partridge Family premiered in 1970, a young actor whose musical ability was soon placed at the front of the show's records. The role transformed him with extraordinary speed. I Think I Love You reached #1. Solo records followed, and Keith's image became inseparable from a vast teen following. The success opened rare opportunities, yet it also confined him inside a carefully marketed identity and stripped away much of his privacy. Cassidy spent years trying to be heard as a musician beyond the smiling television character, touring arenas while fame became difficult to control. At his 1974 London concert, a crowd crush led to the death of 14-year-old Bernadette Whalen, a tragedy that remained part of his story. He continued recording and earned an Emmy nomination for Police Story, but alcohol dependence and declining health darkened his final years. David Cassidy died in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on November 21, 2017, at age 67, from liver failure. Keith gave him a voice heard around the world. The cost was that the world rarely stopped asking him to remain young. Alan Oppenheimer played Wink Burgess, Mr. Atwater, and Lorenzo Bernard in 3 episodes of The Partridge Family. Whether invading the living room with a talk show or flattering Shirley as an over-enthusiastic art teacher, he gave each guest role a distinct comic edge. Born April 23, 1930, in New York City, Oppenheimer entered acting in the 1950s before becoming a busy television character performer. He was 41 when he first appeared on the series in 1971, already skilled at making brief roles register quickly. The show did not attach him to one continuing character, but its repeated invitations revealed the versatility that became the foundation of his career. That flexibility soon carried him beyond live action and into animation, where his voice could create entire worlds without his face appearing on screen. He became the original voice of Skeletor, Man-at-Arms, Cringer, and other figures in He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, then gave sharply different sounds to Vanity Smurf and several creatures in the Never-Ending Story, including Falkor and Gmork. Decades later, those voices brought him renewed convention audiences and recognition across generations. Alan Oppenheimer is 96 in 2026 and is retired from regular acting, though he remained publicly engaged through interviews and fan events into his 90s. His Partridge appearances now feel like early glimpses of a performer whose greatest power would eventually come from being heard rather than seen. Gary Dubin played Punky Lazar, Danny Partridge's young friend and occasional partner in trouble. Punky's impulsive ideas gave Danny someone his own age to challenge, follow, and sometimes resist, adding a rougher edge to the children's stories. Born May 5, 1959, in Los Angeles, California, Dubin began working professionally as a child and had already appeared in television before joining the series. He was 12 when Punky first appeared in 1971, making him a seasoned child performer despite his age. The recurring role gave Dubin one of his most recognizable television identities and allowed him to return across 6 episodes rather than disappear after a single guest appearance. Yet his career did not become tied to one sitcom alone. Before Punky, he had voiced Toulouse in Disney's The Aristocats, and as he grew older, he moved between live action and voice work with unusual persistence. His role as Eddie Marchand in Jaws 2 gave him another lasting screen memory, while later dubbing work in anime and scattered television appearances kept him active long after childhood fame had passed. He continued acting into the 2010s, with his final film work arriving in 2013. Gary Dubin died in Burbank, California on October 8, 2016, at age 57, after bone cancer. His career was never built around one grand return, but around the quieter endurance of a child actor who kept finding his way back to the microphone and camera. Rosemary DeCamp played Grandma Amanda Renfrew, Shirley Partridge's practical mother. Her exchanges with Grandpa Fred brought an older marriage into the comedy, showing that age did not end disagreement, pride, or affection. Born November 14, 1910, in Prescott, Arizona, DeCamp earned degrees at Mills College before radio led her into film and television. She was 60 when she first appeared on The Partridge Family in 1970, already one of Hollywood's most experienced screen mothers. Amanda did not reshape DeCamp's career, but the role extended a screen image audiences had trusted for decades. It also linked the young sitcom to a performer whose work reached back to radio's Dr. Christian and the film Yankee Doodle Dandy. Beyond those familiar maternal roles, DeCamp built an artistic life that television viewers rarely saw. She became a respected copper enamel artist, exhibited her work in galleries and at the Los Angeles Museum of Science and Industry, and supported a student playwriting contest at Torrance High School for 19 years. She later recorded her memoir, preserving memories from a career that crossed every major form of 20th century entertainment. Rosemary DeCamp died at her Torrance, California home on February 20, 2001, at age 90, from complications of pneumonia. Amanda Renfrew was only one grandmother in a long career, yet DeCamp gave her the lived-in patience of someone who knew that family comedy and family strain often share the same room. Suzanne Crough played Tracy Partridge, the youngest child in the family band and the small tambourine player beside her older siblings. Tracy rarely drove the plot, but Crough's quiet presence completed the picture of a household in which every child had a place on stage. Born March 6, 1963, in Fullerton, California, Crough entered entertainment through commercials before winning her first continuing television role. She was 7 when The Partridge Family premiered in 1970, a child performer growing up before a national audience. The series gave her instant recognition, yet Tracy's limited role offered little room to show how she might develop beyond the youngest Partridge. After voicing the character in animated versions, Crough worked only occasionally and made her final credited screen appearance in 1980. Her adult life moved steadily away from Hollywood. She graduated from Los Angeles Pierce College, owned a bookstore until 1993, and later worked as a retail manager, choosing ordinary responsibilities over the uncertainty of child star fame. A 2010 cast reunion briefly returned her to viewers who still pictured the little girl with the tambourine. Suzanne Crough died at her home in Laughlin, Nevada, on April 27, 2015, at age 52. The confirmed cause was arrhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia, a rare form of cardiomyopathy. Tracy remained forever young on television, while Crough's real life became a quieter story of work, family, and fame left behind. Susan Dey played Laurie Partridge, the poised teenage daughter who sang and played keyboards and often served as a calmer counterweight to Danny's schemes. Her understated delivery made Laurie feel observant rather than showy, while her place beside Keith gave the family band much of its youthful appeal. Born December 10, 1952 in Pekin, Illinois, Dey began as a teenage model before winning the role with no previous acting experience. She was 18 when The Partridge Family premiered in 1970, entering television directly from high school under intense public attention. Laurie made her famous quickly, but the image of the gentle sitcom daughter followed her after the series and made adult dramatic roles harder to secure. Dey gradually escaped that limitation through steady work, proving she could carry more demanding material. Her decisive reinvention came as prosecutor and later judge Grace Van Owen on L.A. Law, a performance that earned Emmy nominations and a Golden Globe in 1988. The role replaced adolescent celebrity with professional respect, yet Dey increasingly chose privacy over visibility. After her final acting work in 2004, she withdrew from the screen and has made few public appearances. Susan Dey is 73 in 2026 and remains retired, remembered through 2 television lives that were strikingly different. Laurie Partridge introduced her to millions, but Grace Van Owen showed how completely she had grown beyond the part that first placed her in America's living rooms. Rick Segall played Ricky Stevens, the 4-year-old neighbor and aspiring singer introduced during the final season of The Partridge Family. Ricky's confidence and end-of-episode songs gave the series a new child's eye burst of energy as its original young cast was growing older. Born March 10, 1969, in Plainview, New York, Segall began performing at 2 before entering television as a preschooler. He was 4 when he joined the show in 1973, becoming a regular before he was old enough to understand the scale of national exposure. The role placed him before millions and made Ricky the face audiences associated with the series' late attempt to refresh its family formula. Yet childhood recognition did not trap Segall inside one identity. He continued acting, later worked extensively in theater, and wrote the autobiographical one-man play Barbarian, turning personal experience into a more adult kind of performance. A new audience found him decades later when he co-created and co-hosted the YouTube channel Our Stupid Reactions, whose engagement with Indian film and culture grew beyond 1 billion views by 2025. Rick Segall is 57 in 2026 and remains active as a digital creator and occasional performer. Ricky Stevens lasted only part of 1 television season, but Segall's later reinvention shows how a childhood face can find an entirely different stage. Jeremy Gelbwaks played Christopher "Chris" Partridge, the family's original young drummer during the first season of The Partridge Family. His place behind the drum kit completed the lineup first introduced to viewers, and his replacement after 1 year became one of the show's most visible cast changes. Born May 22, 1961, in Los Angeles, California, Gelbwaks was the son of a computer science professor and entered television as a child. He was 9 when the series premiered in 1970, beginning a national role before most children had reached middle school. Chris brought Gelbwaks lasting recognition, but the part did not begin a conventional Hollywood career. When his family moved east, he left the program and never returned to professional acting, allowing another child to inherit the role while he built an identity outside the camera's reach. The departure became a true reinvention. Gelbwaks earned a chemistry degree from SUNY Potsdam and an MBA from Columbia Business School, then spent decades in technology, marketing, and management consulting. In New Orleans, he also entered artist management through Mid-Citizen Entertainment, applying business experience to a different side of creative life. Jeremy Gelbwaks is 65 in 2026 and remains publicly active as a business and technology planner. Chris stayed frozen in the show's earliest episodes, while the boy who played him quietly chose a future television could never have predicted. Ray Bolger played Shirley's father, credited across his appearances as Grandpa Fred Renfrew and Grandpa Walter Renfrew. His elastic movement and playful vanity turned the older generation's arguments about marriage and aging into affectionate comedy. Born January 10, 1904, in Dorchester, Massachusetts, Bolger rose from vaudeville to Broadway through a loose-limbed dancing style that became unmistakably his own. He was 66 when he first appeared on The Partridge Family in 1970, already a Tony-winning stage star and permanently associated with the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. The guest role could not change a career of such scale, but it allowed Bolger to bridge classic musical entertainment and the new television families watching him from their living rooms. Instead of appearing as a museum piece, he still danced, joked, and made age itself part of the performance. Bolger continued working into the 1980s and was inducted into the Theater Hall of Fame in 1980, receiving formal recognition for a stage career often overshadowed by one motion picture role. By the end of his life, he had become the last surviving principal cast member of The Wizard of Oz, carrying memories of that production after the others were gone. Ray Bolger died in Los Angeles on January 15, 1987, at age 83, from bladder cancer. On The Partridge Family, his grandfather was a brief visitor. In American memory, Bolger remained the dancer who made awkwardness look weightless. Danny Bonaduce played Danny Partridge, the sharp-tongued middle son, bass player, and relentless schemer of the Partridge Family. His bargaining instincts and running battles with Reuben Kincaid supplied much of the show's comedy, often letting a child outmaneuver every adult in the room. Born August 13, 1959, in Broomall, Pennsylvania, Bonaduce was the son of television writer and producer Joseph Bonaduce, and had already worked in sitcoms before joining the cast. He was 11 when the series premiered in 1970, a seasoned child performer suddenly recognized wherever television reached. Danny made Bonaduce famous, but the wisecracking red-haired image followed him long after the family bus stopped, complicating the move into adult acting. He eventually found a stronger second career by turning his quickness and candor into radio, working for roughly 35 years across major American markets. Later life brought a different test. After serious problems with balance, mobility, and speech, he was diagnosed with normal pressure hydrocephalus and underwent brain surgery in 2023. He retired from daily radio that December, but continued speaking publicly about the condition and was selected as an inspirational keynote speaker for the Hydrocephalus Association's 2026 conference. Danny Bonaduce is 66 in 2026. The boy who once talked his way through every fictional crisis now uses survival itself to help others recognize an illness that nearly silenced him. Bert Convy played Marine Specialist Dr. Welander, and later Richard Lawrence, the politician and former romantic interest whose return complicated Shirley's family life. His polished ease allowed him to shift from helpful professional to credible suitor without disturbing the sitcom's gentle tone. Born July 23, 1933, in St. Louis, Missouri, Convy briefly played minor league baseball before studying at UCLA and moving into music and theater. He was 38 when he first appeared on The Partridge Family in 1971. Already an accomplished Broadway performer from the original productions of Fiddler on the Roof and Cabaret, his guest appearances displayed the versatility that soon moved him beyond acting alone. Convy's warmth, spontaneity, and ease with conversation made him especially suited to game shows, where he became the familiar host of Tattletales, Super Password, and Win, Lose, or Draw, winning an Emmy for Tattletales. That reinvention gave him a public identity built not on a fictional character, but on the sense that he could welcome strangers into a room. In 1990, after collapsing while visiting his hospitalized mother, Convy was diagnosed with a brain tumor and had to leave the work that defined his later career. Bert Convy died at his Brentwood home on July 15, 1991, at age 57, 8 days before his birthday. His Partridge roles were brief, yet they preserved the relaxed charm that made viewers feel he was speaking with them, not merely performing for them. The Partridge Family left behind more than bright songs and a painted bus. Its young stars grew older beneath the weight of fame, while others found new lives in drama, radio, teaching, or quiet retirement. David Cassidy, Dave Madden, and Suzanne Crough are now gone. Yet their faces remain fixed in the years when television made them feel like family. Which cast member's journey stayed with you most? Time carried them far from that living room, but the music still plays, where memory refuses to let the final note disappear.